All right. Good morning, guys. It's going to be AP Gov Review 4. Not sure why that just happened. All right. I'm going to increase the size on this. We're getting into Unit 2, Congress. So we're going to talk about, probably get into I'll probably get down to log rolling today. All right. So we're going to get into about half of Congress. So if you want to get out that review sheet that I gave you guys in Canvas, jot down some notes on these. Okay, caucuses when it comes to Congress. This is just like-minded people in Congress are going to organize. They're going to form these informal groups in order to try and get their policies passed, try and get their policies considered in Congress. The Congressional Black Caucus, right? So they're trying to push some things in regards to African-American legislation. And then the Congress that wants to make it easier for you to ride your bike, right? There you go. Okay, the cloture rule. The cloture rule does what? It's going to end the filibuster. It's also known as Rule 22. Okay, so the filibuster, right? I'm going to jump down here really fast. Filibuster is when senators, it only happens in the Senate, they have much more informal rules that gives the senators, each individual senator, a little bit more power. One of those things they can do is they can talk as long as they want on legislation, as long as the debate is still going. The Senate cannot vote on the legislation, so it's a way of delaying the vote. It's a way of trying to kill legislation in the Senate. The cloture rule, or Rule 22, if 60 senators vote to stop debate, now the bill can be voted on. Conference committees, all right? So you have your three types of committees. You have your standing, you have your select, and you have your conference committees. Your conference committees are going to be formed when there are differences between a House and Senate bill. A bill has got to pass the House and Senate in identical form. Therefore, if that doesn't happen, if it gets changed in either the House or the Senate, then a conference committee is going to be formed where both representatives and senators will sit on that committee. And they are going to work that thing out so that it will pass in identical form in both the House and Senate. Okay, deficit. This is just when the government borrows money or has to borrow money in order to pay its obligations. Okay, so I've got deficit on here. You could see something like that. You know what a deficit is because you've done AP Macro at this point. But a deficit is just simply when the government's got to borrow money. Who has the power to borrow? The Congress does. That's in Article 1, Section 8. If the Congress doesn't have enough money to pay the federal government's bills, then they will run a deficit. Okay, the delegate model. So there's three models of representation. There's the delegate, the trustee, and the politico. The delegate model of representation is when representatives and senators vote the way their constituents want them to vote. Okay, so what are constituents? It's the people they represent. So when they are being the voice of the people, when they are voting how their constituents want them to vote, they are operating in the delegate model of representation. Discharge, petition, another quick vocab. Sometimes committees are reluctant to let the rest of the House, this only occurs in the House, doesn't occur in the Senate. Sometimes committees are reluctant to let bills out. If that's the case, but the rest of the House wants to get that bill out for a vote, then the rest of the House can vote. It's a simple majority, 51%, that forces the bill out of committee. It discharges the bill from the committee. Now it can be considered by the entire House. Discretionary spending. This is spending that the government engages in where the government has discretion in how much they spend on it. So things like the military, typically your Republican presidents try and funnel more money to the military, Democrats a little bit less. Other examples of discretionary spending, education, federal parks, things like this. The point being is the federal government's not bound to anything in regards to how much they decide to spend on it. It's at their discretion, okay? Earmarks or riders, okay? So funding bills that have to do with money going to states. Usually you'll see earmarks or riders along with that, where other senators and representatives try and put their own spending projects into the bill. This is an example of pork barrel legislation. Okay, very common when it comes to these spending bills that these representatives and senators try and win money or get money to their state or district. The reason they want to do that makes them look good, right? That's an economic boon to their district or state. And now That's something they can tell their constituents when it's time for re-election. All right, the filibuster we talked about, right? So talking at length, only in the Senate, trying to delay legislation. Okay, gerrymandering, right? So in the Constitution, in Article 1, we get reapportionment. That starts with the census, right? Census is going on right now. So every 10 years, the federal government engages in this census, trying to see where the population shifts in the United States have happened. Some states may gain a representative. Some states may lose a representative. If your state gains a representative, then your state legislature is going to redraw the district lines. When your state legislature does that in order to gain an advantage for a particular party, they are gerrymandering. Okay, last one today, gridlock. Gridlock is just simply when Congress is unable to pass bills. This can be usually because of partisan divisions, meaning, the Republicans can't agree with the Democrats can't agree with the Republicans. Saw a little bit of gridlock as they're trying to pass some of these stimulus bills, right now. They were able to get it passed, but you can see those partisan divisions, those partisan politics playing out in Congress if you're paying attention. It could also be that Congress is both branches of Congress, the Senate and the House, are one particular party, and then the president is another party. That's going to probably create some gridlock as well, where they cannot agree, right? Because the president can veto that legislation. Okay, we've seen more and more gridlock in the United States in recent decades due to the fact that we're seeing increased party polarization, right? The parties are less willing to work with the others. That creates gridlock. Divided government, right, where you have different parties in different branches of government, that as well is going to create gridlock. Okay, that's it for today. We'll finish up Congress tomorrow.